She answered with a very non-committal way of saying, a lot of people think so. So I told her about my experience the evening before. After she heard me, she relaxed and said, yeah. She said, I say hello to them every morning when I come into work, and I say good evening to them when I leave to go home every night. They trust me now. They know I'm here to protect their space. They don't bother me anymore. Later that same day, I encountered another ranger outside and stopped to ask her some questions about the town. Turns out she had lived there as a kid. She knew a lot about it. We chatted for a while, and I told her about my experience at sunset the day before. Her facial expression immediately changed from friendly park ranger to dead serious. Oh, honey, she said, you don't want to be here at sunset. I needed no more validation than that. I have no explanation for any of this. I can't explain the people leaning against my car. I can't explain the intense feeling I had of extreme danger. I can't explain some of the things I saw in the photographs when I uploaded them on my computer. And I can't explain why on that first visit, I got a hint, maybe a warning, of the unresolved hatred and violence in this place. Best I could do was to read everything I could find about the Lincoln County War, try to understand that the history of what happened during that war is the history of real people living every day in fear that they might be the next target, living with their weapons at the ready in a kill or be killed world. And at the end of the war, at least for those who survived, or maybe the ones who died, knowing that they had won nothing. Everyone had lost. There was no closure, only chaos.
It's been 142 years since the first shot was fired in the Lincoln County War. It seems safe to surmise that what started then was the genesis of what happens there now at sunset. Ooh, spooky.
True story.
Makes me want to go see Lincoln.
I want to go back. I do. I before I said I'd never go back, but I want to go back.
It was in the 90s.
Let me think. If I was in my 20s, would have been in, well, I don't know when, would have been in the 70s.
Next.
So
70s?
the second time would have been in the, the second time would have been in the late 90s, early 2000s.
All right, Derek, are you ready?
Yeah.
Derek. Thanks, Chris.
The second time would have been in the late 90s, early 2000s.
All right, let's keep going.
Yeah.
Derek. Sorry, I was getting some feedback. This is Derek.
Hi.
When Derek was growing up.
Let's keep going.
Sorry, I was waiting for
Oh man.
feedback. Hey, what's going on? This is Derek. David.
I have the Zoom live up at the same time, so it was like everybody was saying the same thing over and over again. I was like, wait a second.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you.
So they make you turn off the radio when you call in.
Yeah, right.
Turn off your radio, please.
Oh, were you guys hearing that?
Yeah.
Oh, my bad. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
This is Derek.
Hi.
When Derek was growing up, his dad was a pilot and mechanic. His career moved the family around many times for work.
Yeah, from Missouri to Alaska and eventually Oklahoma. He had a dream of opening up an airport in a very small country town in Oklahoma called Weber's Falls.
When Derek's father left the country for work, the land was used as a farm. Soy, wheat, corn, 100 acres. And that's where Derek's story begins.
So during this time, my mom was going to college in Tahlequah for a career change, about an hour away from home. My brother, he played sports, particularly baseball. And my sister was about 15, 16. She was a bit of a 80s hair metal, let's just say maybe a problem child around that time. And she split time between our farm and our grandparents' place in Muskogee. So where my story starts. I was in about the 4th grade, about 8 or 9. Me, I was an adventuresome little dude, not unlike Dennis the Menace. Blonde hair, all of about 4'8", with a huge farm all to myself. I was very imaginative. 100 acres with 2 ponds, no neighbors. In the late 80s meant I often played on my own, so I was pretty used to not seeing family for hours at a time. It was a great childhood. Living out in the middle of nowhere, my dad made sure we had a few rifles for hunting and for safety. Dad taught us all gun safety, and he'd already showed me how to load and fire a gun and target shoot because, I mean, come on, this was in Oklahoma, hours away from any big city. It was perfectly normal considering. Both of my parents had master's degrees. They were very intelligent. My mom used to be a teacher. They both taught me how to discern reality from fantasy with a fairly skeptical eye. But sometimes, when you're alone, in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by 100 acres of thick, dense cornfield, and you hear a voice outside, what would you do if the nearest person should be miles away? So that night, I was in the living room of our little farm home. It was 1 floor, 3 rooms, 2 exits on opposite sides that both faced the same direction. I was probably making shadow puppets or inventing something like I was prone to. Then I heard it. A voice saying, I couldn't make it out. Was it a wild animal? A dog? So I turned off absolutely anything that could make noise and sat in silence, just to be sure. It started off soft at first, but slowly it built up. A second noise. I don't quite know how to describe it. Was it was this dry moan? Distant yell? Something. I just don't know. I could tell where it was coming from. Maybe 30 yards from the front door, directly in the middle of that cornfield. I looked outside, out into that field, and it was nighttime. It was dark. The night was lit only by the moon covered in clouds. I've never had great night vision, and the low light with 0 light pollution meant it was really hard to adjust to near pitch black. And I swear, I saw the shape of someone in that field, just standing there.
Normally, a child would feel something like scared, terrified.
No, maybe because I had no one to lean on. I felt more resolve to make sure I protected myself. Worried, yeah, I had to do something. That's what I felt. So I went into the closet where we kept our guns. I took out a huge old school police style metal flashlight, D batteries. And I carefully took out and loaded one of our 22s. Shining that giant flashlight out into the field only made shadows more imposing and hard to see. Even with that light, I was absolutely not going out into that field. So me, being all of about, what, 4'8", maybe 9, I used my most serious, booming little kid voice that I could muster, and I just screamed out something like, "You better get out of here! I have a gun!" It's funny, but I was serious. I took that gun and I fired that rifle out into the air. Then I waited for what felt like hours. All night, I couldn't move. I stared into those hidden, dark rows of corn. As I stared, there was no movement, no blinking. I swear my ears have never been tuned more to the sounds of nighttime than that moment. Crickets, frogs, but no other voices. I don't know if or when this person left, or even if there was anyone at all. Eventually, I figured that my mind must have been playing tricks on me. You know, when your emotions are heightened, sounds and sights could sometimes trick your mind into seeing someone maybe out in that field. God, especially with the kind of terrible night vision I had. I locked up the gun again. I went to bed. No more sounds happened, and eventually my mom and brother came home. The next day, I was afraid to tell my parents that I'd fired any kind of a gun, all because I got worked over what was, probably a wild dog, or worse, nothing.
So, total unknown at this point, but there's more. About a week later,
I don't know. I must have had a bad dream as a kid, and so I went to sleep at my parents' bedroom. My mom and dad were there. I remember trying to fall asleep for a while, but it was really hard to do that because my dad, he really knew how to snore. They could both sleep through just about anything. When I rolled over to my side to get a little bit more comfortable, I noticed that their sliding closet was open. And at that moment, in the dark, I could swear I saw someone just standing there. For a moment, I was wide-eyed and my heart just started beating like crazy. But this, this little logical part of my brain kicked in just to remind me that I do have terrible night vision. I constantly seem to see things in the dark, things that just don't exist. So I blinked. This time I wasn't alone. I had no one to be afraid of. I had all my family there. Both parents were there to protect me. So I calmed down. I mean, it's just a coat or something. Just another trick of my brain. back to sleep. Great news. No one was murdered. No scary voices. Moved on with my life. And I kept all that imaginary stuff to myself.
Okay, so now you've had these two ordinarily terrifying encounters and still no explanation.
But 2 months later, I finally ended up confiding with my sister about firing a rifle at some crazy cornfield murderers. I mean, how could I keep something like that to myself? It was then that my sister took a deep sigh, looked at me with kind of a mortified smirk, and said, "Oh, I know." What? You see, there's only a few things you can actually do for fun in an incredibly rural farming community in the 80s. And one of those things happened to be going to house parties. Apparently, one of her friends had parked far enough away to sneak up and away with my sister. And apparently they had done that before. But my sister wasn't there that night. So, apparently, it was the 80s, man, no cell phones. He didn't know. So instead of getting her attention, he got mine and a gun. He ended up laying in that field for hours, petrified that he would get shot by me if he made another sound. Apparently, up to that point, both my sister and I had both kept a secret, hoping not to get caught. Oh, and also the dude in the closet I thought I saw in the dark, also her friend, caught mid-sneak and trapped until 4 a.m. in that closet. I'm not sure if there's a lesson to be learned from learning the truth. My gut, um, my history of bad night vision, a logical, skeptical brain, all those things crashed really hard during those nights as a kid. As an adult, I'm not one to think some shadow behind me is a ghost or creature from some alternate dimension. But maybe it might not just be in your mind. It might really be someone or something hiding in the dark.
Dun, dun, dun.
Spooky core.
There you have it, folks. Sometimes the things that go bump in the night are just people wanting to bump uglies.
I think that narration needs to go in there. That line needs to go in there.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
My sister would love that. Thank
That's
you.
true. Yeah.
And by the way,
definitely get her on the.
I'm so glad I'm not following Derek.
All right. Is it Darby next?
Susan?
Susan.
Oh, Susan. My mistake. Sorry. Okay.
That's okay.
Now, we saw John through that whole thing. We never saw Derek, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Derek's video is off, so that's part of it.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
And right now it's just kind of.
So when through my phone, when I was streaming my video, I think it immediately switched over to my an image of myself because I've only got my phone to read from. Sorry. But it won't be that way.
That's exactly what happened. Is whenever you were reading the document, it switched you over. So, which is fine. And then we still have to sort out. We're watching a Zoom live right now. There's a Zoom live running of this, or a YouTube live running of this right now. So we're sort of seeing like how it's appearing on the front end. We making notes of the things we have to sort out. So, cool. Up next is Susan. John, take us away.
Oops,
The
hang on.
rarefied air of the 7,000-foot elevation of Santa Fe, New Mexico has a lot to do with the incomparable blue of the sky. The romance of the wide New Mexican sky is a special treasure for the residents of the land of enchantment.
This is Susan,
Hello.
and she's about to tell us a little bit about what those enchanting skies can hold.
I ran away to New Mexico after a painful divorce. I lived there from 1992 to 2004, which was a magical time of professional and personal growth. It had, I had been divorced for more than 5 years by the time of this event, and I was ready to dip my toe back into the dating pool when a friend introduced me to a gentleman who was a man of note around Santa Fe. He had the qualities I look for most in a man: humor, intelligence, and a heartbeat. But he wasn't the kind of man I usually went for. Well, that may make me sound superficial, but I liked him and I was giving it a shot. I had finally grown up, learned who I was after floundering through a few more failed romances, and I was ready for an adult relationship. Early on, my new companion invited me on an overnight trip to a dude ranch. Now, that may not sound exciting to you, but I was a tour and event manager for northern New Mexico at the time. So the idea of seeing some place that I could possibly book for business purposes added a measure of interest, in addition to the romantic possibilities. We arrived at the ranch in a secluded bit of land along a creek and deep in the New Mexican forest. The owners were quite deferential to us, my companion being someone who could promote their business to the general public. Me, well, they knew nothing about me, so I was able to get the full experience anonymously. And it was a lovely experience. We went hiking along tree-lined paths, dappled with the shadows of autumn leaves. The beautiful aspen of northern New Mexico had by now changed to their storied golden hue, and the leaves whispered secrets we were soon to discover. In the afternoon, we took a clip-cloppy horseback ride through the trees. It was quite scary at times as we perched on the trail's edge, high above the creek. The air was crisp with the promise of winter just ahead. Later, we played indoor games in the recreation room, darts and ping pong. And then we tucked into a standard dude ranch dinner, a chuck wagony meal of steaks and biscuits and the like. It had been a relaxing and enjoyable day. To cap it off, we decided to take one last walk in the woods, alone, in the alpenglow distinct to the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. How more romantic could you get for a new relationship? We walked a bit until we found a bench upon which to rest and talk. And we talked a lot. It was a new relationship after all, and still in the exploratory stages of getting to know each other, likes and dislikes, past histories and future dreams. We sat in a small valley, the trail running between two glyphs, which formed a V-shaped valley. At the end of the valley, we could see the evening progress through a painterly Santa Fe sunset. Alpenglow to striated turquoise, to shades of teal, and on into inky black night. As the sky changed overhead, a half moon appeared to add a touch of romance, and stars began to pop out of the sky, shiny as glass beads, and so close you could grab one to put it in your pocket. In this supremely romantic setting, I'm sure there was even a little bit of canoodling going on. Zip! Suddenly, a brilliant white light appeared at the end of the valley. Unhumanly fast and unthinkably bright, it hovered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 seconds, and zip! It disappeared as suddenly as it had arrived. My mind ran wild. What was it? Was it man-made? Was it military? Well, no nearby bases, but there were rumors of secret installations in the mountains of New Mexico. Or was it possible? Was it just possible that humanity had nothing to do with it at all? He just got quiet. Everything was quiet. We were shrouded in silence, as the moon seemed to darken. The skies faded from view, and neither of us spoke, our eyes riveted to the spot where the light had appeared. And then I asked him, "Did you see that?" He said, "I didn't see anything." And then I said, "Neither did I." And we never spoke of it again.
Wait, what? This brilliant light appears, sits there for 5, maybe 6 seconds, then disappears into this new all-consuming silence, and you both immediately deny it happened?
Oh, I knew he had seen it, though. By denying it, it confirmed in my mind that he had seen something that needed denying, or why wouldn't he have said?
So when, even in the moment, they were consciously attempting to unsee the thing that they had both clearly seen.
Perhaps that night was too much for either of us to handle. The relationship never progressed beyond that weekend. Oh, and I discovered a little while later that I was his rebound girl after an ultimatum from his previous girlfriend. So much for my imagined romantic getaway.
So it was a life-changing evening in more ways than one.
Were we both afraid that if we continued forward, we would eventually have to deal with what we had seen that night, or commit to something that didn't feel quite right for either of us? But something has never changed in all the time since. I really wish I knew what we saw on that starry New Mexico night.
David, can I take 3? Cody's trying to call me. And
Yeah. So it's an intermission anyway. Let's go ahead and take 5.
Okay.
Who's up next?
Are we
Darby.
done from the first act then?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll send you guys notes I'll send you each an email. Give you notes.
Thank you, bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Hey, David,
Hey, me.
I have a question about mine.
Who's I? Oh, hi, Lori.
Hi. So at the end of mine, let's see. We have the newscaster voice. It's a horrific scene. I meant for that to then throw back to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I just forgot to put Lori in the script.
Oh, so you're gonna
So I was
you mean
gonna
after the John Durkee quote, it was gonna go back to you? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
But then you had added that maybe it was that little girl after all. I think
Yeah.
that might be cool for John to end it with that.
That sounds good to me.
Okay.
Let's do that.
So we just need to tell him.
Yeah, you'll have to change like your pronouns back. I think I altered some pronouns in
I
that.
think I can remember the pronouns.
You think?
Maybe.
I don't know. You might forget. I'm teasing, of course. Yeah, that's fine. Just retype that and then shoot me an email that has the whole script in it.
I will. I'll fix it in the PDF because I know you're on a Mac. So.
No. Throw the text into an email. That's the easiest way for me to
Okay.
put it back together. Yeah. Sorry.
That's all right. So Richard wanted me to ask you, do you need any intermission type graphics or anything from him?
If he wants to put together intermission graphics, that'd be great. I think we're probably going to do like, what's reasonable, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I don't know how long people are going to want to sit at home and wait. They can probably get up and go to the bathroom and get a drink and a snack in 5 minutes, right?
I think 5 is plenty for this kind of intermission.
I think, yeah, but let's also like reel him in on the spooky nature, because like it's not that kind of
scary.
You know what I mean? Yeah, not a scary show. So,
well, why don't you talk to him? I can send you his phone number.
Okay.
I mean, I don't mind talking to him, but I think he'd like to hear from you.
Okay.
I think he's sick of me to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, but if it comes to it and he needs bossed, I'm turning it back over to you. I'm
Thanks
just saying, I don't.
so much. Oh, hey, can you even see me? I'm in the
Nope.
dark. Okay, try this.
Well, it's just that your video is not on.
Oh, you have me turned off? Okay.
I don't think we have you turned off. I think
I didn't turn you off. I have it set to where everyone comes in turned off, actually.
Ha ha ha!
So I wanted to see if my little light thingy works.
This little dot of yours. So those of us anybody who's here who's got an iPhone, raise your hand.
That ain't me, baby.
There's a little app called Flashlight HD. I don't know if you can see it. Here, I'll take a screenshot and blow it up. Good. Let's save that. Nope. Done. Save the photos. Boom. Bada boom. Bada boom. All right. So here's this app. It's called Flashlight HD. It looks like that. If you go get that app, you'll be ready for the next notes regarding it. If you have an iPhone. Everybody see that?
Yes. No, I don't have an iPhone, but yes.
I don't know how many people are looking at this that have iPhones though, so I don't know who to wait for to go get it. But it's called Flashlight HD.
Sorry, Android.
Okay, no worries. We have a solution for you as well. So that we all kind of unitize our flashlight view. Once we get our screens set the way we want them, and then we just put that flashlight app from your phone underneath your face, and everybody will be doing the same. Like we'll all have the same color and everything else. So we'll be able to use these on your phone, which I think everybody's going to have access to a free app that we can use for this on your phone instead of having to pass out flashlights to everybody. So that we can all look the same, or at least have the same light. Hi, Lori. I see your dark room now.
So we don't have the Android app yet. We don't know what it is.
Yeah, we do. Richard sent me an email earlier. I just have not copied it and sent it out to everyone else.
Okay.
It might say the name, not Richard. I don't know why I said Richard. Michael.
And if somebody has any time to improve my video quality, give me a message tomorrow.
I think that's probably going to be down to you plugging your computer into your router if it isn't already.
It's not.
I think if you can get yourself a Cat5 cable and plug it into your router, you'll be all set.
Okay.
I think it just automatically picks up what your upload speed is and adjusts your video quality based on that.
Alrighty. I'm going to have to move my computer.
And David has cable. He said that.
Yeah, I do have some cable. You might be looking at like putting a 100-foot piece of cable in like a big pile on your floor, but I do have cable for most people.
Okay. Yeah, actually, my computer's in my bedroom, the router's in my living room. But
yeah, I have enough cable probably to accommodate that.
Cool.
I'll just figure out a time to drop it off at your house.
Great.
Hang on.
How's New York, Darby?
It's good.
Good.
The
Good.
fall foliage is gorgeous.
I bet it's just about time right now.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's gorgeous.
Yeah, yeah, good.
How is it down there?
It's today was 86 or something like that, and at 11 o'clock tonight it'll plummet to about 45.
Sounds like Oklahoma.
Yeah, and then it'll be rainy all morning, and then
gosh.
Saturday will be nice and Sunday will suck again. But
I'm surprised there are no tornadoes coming through.
that's true. But I tell you what, I don't miss is I don't
Please
miss
send
when
that link to
when it snows on Halloween and it stays till Easter.
Oh.
That I don't miss.
I remember that. Yeah, that's terrible. Although I have a niece who is in Muskogee and she's 8 years old and she has not ever seen snow in her entire life,
Wow.
which breaks my heart. Like,
tell
talk
you,
about global warming.
I used when I lived in New York, I used to dry ice styrofoam cooler of snow to my nieces in Tulsa.
Gosh, that's so cute.
Yeah,
That's awesome. We get ice cream from a company in New York because it's the only place that makes safe ice cream, and they send it to us with like dry ice in there. It's really awesome. So
What's
like it
the
must be a
name?
common practice. I don't know. I actually just tried to hang on. Mark is the guy's name. Mark Roth.
What do you mean safe ice cream?
It's a la mode ice cream.
Oh.
We're allergic to trina and sesame in our house. So
Oh no.
yeah, and we try to also eat non-dairy foods. So
That's good.
so they have non. Actually, I think all their stuff is still dairy, but they have no nuts. I think they also have allergies in their family, so they just like made a place that does it. I actually tried to. I looked into investing in a franchise for here in Tulsa, but they're asking a lot of money right now. So,
Sure.
I mean, I have enough to like maybe do something small, but not to this extent that they wanted. Plus, it wasn't. Anyway, you guys don't want to know about that. But anyway, so let's get rolling. Act 2. Who's up? Wait, is John back?
No.
Okay.
Or not on here yet today. No, he's not here.
He's not here at all.
He's not in the.
I think he logged off.
Yeah, he's not He's not on the participant thing anymore.
Oh, he probably had to log off to take that phone call. Kind of. Tell you what, I've got to go to the bathroom anyway. So if anybody else needs to like go to the bathroom or get a drink, do that real fast. We'll give him another couple minutes and then we'll come back and resume. Okay.
Oh, he just came back.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I still have to go to the bathroom. You guys can start without me though. I think it's okay.
You want me to start?
Yeah. Whenever.
Sorry, I
you're
had
ready.
family drama, kids crying, and
it's all
telling
good.
Yeah. All right. Darby, you ready?
Yeah.
Darby's an Oklahoma native who moved to New York City 9 years ago, only to be displaced during the pandemic.
I'd been in the city for nearly a decade, and I was doing pretty well for myself, working solely as a freelance artist. That is until COVID hit, and much like millions of others, I lost my job and was unable to pay my rent. My partner and I were forced to move out of the city in search of another option. While we were browsing Craigslist, we saw this ad, seeking couple for live-on farming property management. We didn't know too much about the situation or the property, and we certainly weren't qualified for the job, but hey, what the heck? We should go for it. We joked that we could be murdered as soon as we moved in, but honestly, the situation was too good to pass up.
Darby and Oliver jumped at the chance. Work and housing with no commute. This was too good of an opportunity to pass up. And somehow these two city kids with no farming or management experience got the job. So they pack up everything they have and their 2 cat children and head upstate to the Hudson Valley with no idea of what awaits them.
So, growing up in Oklahoma, which is a relatively young state, I guess it never really occurred to me how much history there was throughout the rest of the country. And we're only talking colonial history here. Like the buildings and the properties around this part of the country are so old, it's hard for me to believe sometimes. The home was this gorgeously refurbished property built in the 1840s. Downstairs is this massive 6-bedroom, 2-kitchen household that I think used to be a horse barn. Our little apartment, which was under construction when we moved in, was upstairs, sitting above 2 of the bedrooms of the west wing of the house. While they were finishing the update of the little upstairs studio space, we were sleeping in one of the bedrooms directly below it. When I described it to friends, they would ask me, "So, do you think it's haunted?" No, absolutely not. Not because I don't believe in that sort of stuff. Trust me, I do. I have enough experiences to write a damn book about it. But this place just didn't seem haunted. It was bright, the walls were charming, eggshell blue. It just didn't have that vibe of being haunted, like, at all. Now, one thing you have to know about our new boss and landlord, Charles, is that he likes to randomly wander onto parts of the property regardless of time of day and regardless of who may be there. There were several times wherein we would find him in our temporary wing, just sitting on a chair, staring out the window. It was pretty off-putting, to be honest. So all of this moving and the global pandemic, along with the invasion of our space from our new overlord, was starting to take a mental and emotional toll on us. But really, it seemed that our beautiful black cat, Becky, was enduring the brunt of the emotional burden. Ever since we arrived to the house, she'd been acting out of sorts. She is really regal and she's an elegant woman. We call her the queen. But since we moved upstate, she became the only word I can think to describe it is frantic. She began to lick and scratch and bite at herself literally until she bled. She began developing sores all over her body. She was losing fur on her arms and legs and belly and tail, face, ears, literally everywhere. We had tests done. We tried herbal remedies, CBD. We tried cat behaviorists, and literally nothing helped. It was really painful to see my baby mutilate herself like that and have no way to help her.
While they tried to settle into their new routine, Darby's feelings changed. And now she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about their new home.
There were times that I would be reading in bed and Ollie would be like brushing his teeth or something, and I would hear someone say something. So I would shout out, "Sorry, what?" And Ollie would say, "What? Sorry?" And we would kind of like joke, riff off of each other, like, "What? What? What'd you say? Sorry, I didn't catch that." This happened a few times, and finally he was like, "No, seriously, what did you say? I heard you say something." But I never said anything. I don't know, that was weird, but like it never really registered to me as a weird thing. Like I'm always hearing distant semi voices or whatever. Not like I'm suggesting it's spirits or anything, but I just think it's an overactive imagination. Ollie, on the other hand, seemed really freaked out by it. Now, this is a guy who, whenever he would hear about ghosts or aliens or chakras or horoscopes or anything like that, his response was always, "Woo." He doesn't believe in the supernatural or anything of the sort. So one night we had gone to bed early. I was exhausted from doing 9 hours of farm work, so I passed out almost immediately. For some reason, I woke up around 2 or 3 in the morning. Like nothing in particular woke me up. Rather, my eyes just kind of shot open. And Oliver was laying next to me. He was reading a book, and Becky was in between us. She was doing her usual routine of self-mutilation, like the frantic, like gnawing at herself. I tried to soothe her. I pet her, I distract her, and as per usual, nothing worked. So I rolled over and tried to go back to sleep. I'm tossing a little, trying to get cozy, and all of a sudden I just hear this shh. Like the way you would calm a fussy baby. I get a little annoyed and I'm just like, "Oliver, are you shushing me?" And he says, "No, I thought you were shushing me." My stomach just dropped. Later, telling this story to my friends, they asked me, was it a tree or the wind outside? No way. I mean, it sounded like it was coming from the bed, like right next to me. I mean, I thought it was Ollie, for Christ's sake, and he thought it was me. There's no way that sound was coming from outside the window. And it was such this distinct, familiar rhythm. I mean, like anyone who's ever held a baby has made that sound. Anyway, we would hear that sound, not as distinct or clear, but we would hear it from time to time when we were all in the same bedroom. As eerie as it was, I kind of got used to it. It wasn't scary by any means, other than the fact that it was a disembodied human noise coming from the house. But I mean, objectively, it was rather soothing.
So, Darby and her family gradually become accustomed to their well-meaning roommate. And then one night.
So We had just finished watching a movie in bed, and we're all lying there, and all of a sudden I hear some movement coming from our little apartment upstairs, the one that's almost done with construction. Must be a squirrel. Then we hear a distant shh, and suddenly we hear three distinct heavy boot steps directly above us. I can't say exactly why, but this feeling of sheer terror came over me. I remember looking at the time and it says 11:57. I'm thinking, is Charles up there checking out the progress of the apartment? Like, what the fuck? What a weird time to be up there. I got unreasonably angry at this thought, probably because I was so scared, but there are no other sounds. We just froze, waiting and waiting and waiting. Nothing. We had never heard anyone enter the apartment, and we had never heard anybody leave the apartment. Just those three heavy, malevolent boot steps. And this was so unlike the shushing. Ollie and I talked about it, and it felt distinctly masculine and distinctly menacing. Like all the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. We heard those boot steps, and for whatever reason, we were petrified. It wasn't until a couple weeks later when we were hiking around the property that we happened upon a cemetery. The cemetery was hauntingly gorgeous. It was surrounded by wildflowers. There were about 30 to 40 graves all jutting out at odd angles, some broken in half, some that were worn down so much so that you couldn't even read them. The ones you could read were from the early 1800s, all from this family called the Wagars. We did find one grave for a young woman named Sarah Wagar. It read, died in childbirth, 1828 to 1854. She was only 26, younger than me. I don't know why, but I feel like she was the kinder presence that we experienced. I don't know, but for some reason it felt like Sarah was not only trying to comfort us, but she was also trying to protect us. Also, we found out upon some further research that there had been slaves on the property, and the tiny upstairs room that was being turned into a quaint studio apartment for two had previously been slave quarters, housing as many as 12 people at a time, right above the cattle and the horses. And here's the exact place.
Oh God, you're there.
I'm there.
Oh,
Dude, Darby, like, I don't know. I feel like you have to make a decision about whether or not you're going to do this outside.
I can't. I think it's going to be way too cold.
Way too cold. Well, the original, John, I should tell you, the original idea was for her to like use a hotspot on her cell phone and go out and do her presentation from the cemetery and just be like, boom, here's the headstone.
Okay, tomorrow I'll do rehearsal out there and see how it feels.
Okay.
I like the room too, though. I mean, it's effective.
Yeah.
Chills. I'm like, oh my God.
But if you're going to do that, Darby, though, you have to be like, set yourself up on the bed and then like scoot the computer back and be like, so she was like right here.
Yeah, right here.
So, okay. All right, let's keep on trucking. We're really far behind. So thank you, Darby. Who's next?
Lori.
Lori. All right. And lights up.
Oh, light. You want light? There you go. How's
Yeah.
that? Is that
I want
any
to tilt
light?
your
Good,
screen down
except
a little
for,
bit.
like this is it looks like you're doing that scene from When Harry Met Sally when they take the picture and it's like they pay the guy and it's like just their heads cut off.
I can't see because I'm not in the window yet. So, John, real quick. John Burns.
Yes, ma'am.
At the very end of my story, right after the newsreader quote.
Yeah.
We're going to throw it back to me. So you're going to read, it's a horrific scene. Then it's going to go back to me and we'll fix this in the script. So I'll read, you see the date was blah, blah, blah. And then you have the last line. Maybe it was that little girl after all.
Got it.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, can you see me at all?
Just the
We can
top of
see
your
you, but you're like in the bottom of the screen.
face.
So I need to do this.
Yeah.
Yep.
That better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you do it more?
No, but I can sit up. You see me yet? Did that make it worse? Better?
No, it's good. Your light's really dim though.
Yeah, it's getting old. I can flip it to another.
Nothing is weak. It has a life about it.
See, I just don't want to be on camera is the whole thing. I'm very shy. Y'all know that about me, right?
Yeah. There you go.
Okay.
That's it. Yay, Lori.
Okay.
The flashlight.
All right, and go.
Parenthood. Perhaps the scariest thing humans can go through. People who are often just learning to take care of themselves and maybe one another are suddenly thrust into the position of caring for an utterly helpless and dependent little life. Terrifying. Any mistake you make seems like it can have ramifications for years, even generations to come. Everyone wants to do it perfectly, and no one ever does. Lori Carlson has a story about parenthood. Lori, were you the young woman who couldn't wait to start having babies?
Hey, real quick. I just want to make this note for everybody. So, cut your last names from scripts. Cut all last names off of scripts.
Okay.
And okay, carry on.
John, feed me that last line, please.
Lori, were you the young woman who couldn't wait to start having babies?
What, me? No. John and I got married in 1986 with a specific plan not to have kids. Nothing against kids. We just didn't see ourselves as parents.
But that changed.
Yep. In November of 1990, we found out I was pregnant. It was a huge surprise because I was on the pill. I was actually a little nervous to tell John about it. I wasn't sure he'd be happy.
Were your fears well-founded?
No, he was thrilled. His reaction was rom-com perfect. He hugged me, kissed me, got super protective of me. It was just wonderful.
So Lori and John were going to have that life-changing experience of parenthood. That awesome responsibility for a tiny life. But what if that little life comes to you with something else, something special, something inexplicable?
Even though it wasn't in our plan, I mean, how much do 20-somethings really plan anything? It suddenly felt important and right to have this baby. We chose to keep the news to ourselves for several reasons, but primarily we wanted time to get used to the idea. And we wanted to make sure that nothing happened. Everybody knows that 3-month rule. If you make it to 3 months, you'll probably make it to term. So the only ones who knew we were pregnant were the two of us.
You found out in November. I bet that made for a special Christmas that year.
Christmas celebrations in our family were done on Christmas Eve at my parents' house, east of Claremore. And Christmas of 1990 was no different. We had all the gang there, my two brothers, my big brother with his wife and son, John and I, my little brother, my parents, and my maternal grandparents. So not a lot of people, but for us, that was a big family event. John and I did toy with the idea of sharing our news. It seemed kind of like the perfect time, but then we decided to keep it just for us, at least for a few more days. We ate all the food. We opened the presents. We complained about eating all the food. And then my grandparents announced they were heading home. Earlier than usual, but no one really thought anything about that. There was a lot of food. John and I hung around a bit longer, then decided we were going back to Tulsa. Now, there are 2 ways to get to Tulsa from where my folks lived. The quickest was to jump on the Will Rogers Turnpike, which was the way we usually went. As we were heading up the Highway 20 to the Turnpike gate, I told John I wanted to go through town instead. He looked at me like I was crazy and said, "We never do that." But I insisted. As we passed the Turnpike gate, I saw the flashing lights of emergency vehicles by a motel just outside of Claremore. I told John to slow down so I could see what was going on. He looked at me again, this time with concern, and said, "We never do that." I told him I need to see, and I did. I needed to, because those lights were in an ambulance, and sitting on the street was my grandfather's truck. My grandfather was a former cop and police chief, so I assumed he had stopped to help. We pulled in behind the truck, and I jumped out and ran to the driver's side. There was a woman I didn't know sitting in the driver's seat of my grandfather's truck. That did not happen. No one drove that truck but him. That truck was his pride and joy. I peered in and saw my grandmother on the passenger side. I ran around to her and asked her where Grandpa was. She said, "Oh, good, you're here. Grandpa's gone. He died. He pulled the truck over and he died. I know he did. He's in the ambulance. And I need you to call your mother. I can't remember her phone number or her last name." Now, by this time, my mother had been married to the same man for over 30 years. She said this all very matter-of-factly without tears. My mother was her only child, but Grandma was in such shock, she couldn't remember what she needed to know in that moment. I went into the motel office, called my mom, and John drove Grandma to the hospital, and I followed in our truck. He had died. He had pulled over safely, one final act of protection for the wife he adored, and then he left.
That seems uncanny in and of itself, but you felt like you were at the epicenter of it all.
Well, the impulse to make those two decisions that put me right where my grandmother needed me were not just stray thoughts or something I wanted to do. They were imperative. There was an overwhelming feeling inside of me that I had to do those things. If John had tried to steer the truck off to the turnpike, I'm fairly certain I would have shouted, "No!" Grab the wheel. That's how great the need was to be there. So who was telling me that? Was it my grandfather? Maybe. But I think it might have been that little life inside of me.
Hold on. There's more. Fast forward to early August, 1991.
So we had our wonderful baby girl, probably the sweetest, most beautiful baby ever born. We were having the normal travails of new parenthood. She didn't want to nurse, but I was determined to breastfeed, so we were struggling with that. She did not want to sleep through the night. She adamantly refused to settle or be comforted. After several nights of this, we were exhausted. John was a hero about taking his turn getting up with her, but our house was small, and a crying baby would keep anyone awake. Finally, as we were at the ends of our shared ropes, she seemed to settle, and we crawled back into bed. I was just starting to drift off when she started crying again. John and I both groaned. Then we heard it. "Shh, little one. Mommy and Daddy need to rest." I sat straight up in the bed. John rolled out and ran into the baby's room. I was shaking all over, but I couldn't seem to get out of the bed. John came back in, his face drained white, and said, "She's fine. She's sound asleep, even smiling a bit." I started to stutter, but I heard, "Whose voice was that?" And he said, "I think it was your grandfather." And he was right. Of course it was. Because somewhere in the cosmos, our little peanut-sized person-to-be had met her grandfather when he passed out of this world, and he stuck around to make sure she was okay. She still had some restless nights, but the worst of it was over after that night.
Was that a God moment for you?
I'm not religious. Neither is my husband. But maybe there is a universal green room of some kind, somewhere where the souls who have been briefly meet with the souls to be and make a connection. I like to think so, because I know had he gotten to meet her, my grandpa would have adored our daughter.
So this would be a great place to end the story. It's a hell of a tale. Two souls tethered through time and space. But there's more. And this is where it turns toward the shocking.
Maybe it was just my daughter. Okay, it's 1995, and my almost 4-year-old and I are in our little house near the fairgrounds in Tulsa, watching The Lion King on video and eating breakfast. She suddenly turned to me and said, "Mommy, what was that bang?" I hadn't heard anything. So I said, "What bang?" She said, "Mommy, it was a big bang." I didn't think anything of it. She gave me that look that all children do when parents are being particularly obtuse and went back to watching her movie. I checked the clock and noticed it was a bit before 9 a.m. So I told her it was time for us to finish breakfast and get dressed for the day. We did the dishes, watched the rest of The Lion King, then Pinocchio, and colored and played until lunchtime. I decided to take her to McDonald's for lunch. Yeah, I'm that parent. So she could play a bit in their play place and I could read and keep an eye on her. We got in the car and I turned on the radio.
It's hard to say exactly what happened at this point. There was definitely an explosion. We have to assume from the destruction, we see that there are injuries and quite possibly deaths. It's a horrific scene.
You see, the date was April 19th, 1995. And there was a big bang a little before 9 a.m. A terrifyingly big bang. They killed 168 people and injured hundreds more at the Murrah Building in Oklahoma City, over 100 miles from our little house in Tulsa.
Maybe it was that little girl after all.
Cue the music. That's
It is after 9 a.m., Lori.
That is right. Okay, I couldn't remember.
Yeah, 9:07, I think.
Okay, so I'll keep the pronoun or the time the way it's written then.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you for sure.
Chills on that one.
It's true, John. It's true.
All true.
And it's Ione?
Ione?
Ione. Is she there?
She might be muted. I saw her there.
Okay. Hi, I was muted. Yes, it's
Ione.
Ione. Thank you, David.
Ione. Yeah.
And
Ione. AKA Gertrude.
yes, son.
Mama.
Yes.
That's a good way to think about that scene when you, or any of those scenes. Yeah, Mama.
Okay, David, we're past time.
Go.
This is Ione.
Hi there.
Ione's story is about her mother.
My mother comes from a long line of medicine women.
Otherwise known as shaman by those from European descent. These strong women were healers to many of their Native American reservations. Women and men would travel miles to see her grandmother, seeking help from conceiving, sicknesses, to all sorts of various ailments, including bad luck.
She was very spiritual and very wise. My mother was pretty young when my grandmother died. And the night before she passed, my mother had this dream. And she was standing in an open field, nothing for miles around except for one single tree. And perched in the tree was a crow. And the crow whispered to her the name of her brother, Joseph. The next morning, my grandmother died in her kitchen from unexpected heart failure.
Hold on.
Oh, sorry.
Take us back a bit, because there's a rich history of visions and how animals relate different meanings throughout much of non-Western culture, including indigenous peoples. What messages do crows normally confer?
Yeah, right. I know. When, like, in Western culture, most people associate crows with death because of their color and their eating habits. I mean, they are often seen eating carrion, which is like a fancy word for rotting dead flesh. But to many Native Americans, especially tribes from the Great Plains, like my ancestors, that's where we're from, crows were seen as a symbol of wisdom or intuition. And some believe that to have one cross your path in some way was good fortune. But here's the thing. Seeing one in a dream, according to my ancestors, can take on a totally different connotation. it depends on where the crow is specifically in the dream. You know, like, is it flying? Is it following you? Is it staring at you? Every detail allegedly has meaning.
So back to the story. A few years later, Ion's mother had the same dream again, except this time, the crow whispered to her the name of her best friend.
Brenda. And the next morning, her stepfather fell 7 stories from a construction site, and he died in the hospital. So this has been like a reoccurring dream for my mother, and every time it precedes someone's death. Yet, though, every time the crow whispers the wrong name.
2 nights before Ione graduates from Temple University, her parents flew in from Tulsa, Oklahoma, to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Before they had left Tulsa, my mother told me that she had this like overwhelming feeling of dread, which was not normal for my mother. She loved traveling and visiting me in Philly. She'd been there tons of times. And so I didn't know why this particular trip was filled with dread.
Upon arrival in Philly, Ione's father called her with more disturbing news.
My father had told me that my mother had had a panic attack on the plane, which is totally out of character for my mother. She never has been someone to have panic attacks, like, ever. So when I finally talked to my mother, she had told me what happened.
Ione's mother had that same dream about the crow the night before their trip to Philly.
I was shocked to hear that she'd had, you know, the dreaded dream of the crow. I mean, especially during a time like it's supposed to be joy. Like, so trying to be as calm as I could, since my mother was obviously stressed out, I asked her, "What name did the crow whisper to you?" It said no one's name. She said with a look I had never seen on my mother's face, like ever before. It just looked at me.
Later that night, around 2 a.m., Ione's father received a call from her Uncle Joseph, who had been staying at their house to watch the animals while they were in Philadelphia.
So my Uncle Joseph said he had been asleep downstairs on their couch when a horrific storm, thunderstorm came through Tulsa. There had been a fire due to lightning striking the house. And the lightning had struck the house directly over my parents' bed, just a foot from where my mother sleeps.
That was the last time her mother had a dream about the crow.
So I have to tell you one thing. Now I have the reoccurring dream. And strangely, it is eerily, I'm sorry, I must tell you one thing. I now have a reoccurring dream. And strangely and eerily, the same. Open field, one lone tree, but no crow. I told my mother about this and she said, "Oh, that's how my dream started." So now to this day, I dread the day that that crow may whisper a name.
The cat's in the cradle and the silver spoon. Little
Little
boy,
boy and the man.
When you're coming home, son, I don't know when.
We'll get together then.
No, we'll have a good
No, we'll
time
have a good
then.
time then.
and the crow whispers names all over the place.
Y'all are killing me.
All right, next.
Susan.
Yeah, yes.
When a person
Susan, you may not have been here. I updated your script and put it online.
Oh, okay.
It's on your Google Drive.
Well, let me go because I was checking all day today and never saw it.
Well, you must not have checked at like 5:55 when I loaded them up there super late in the day. Sorry. Yeah, it was pretty late, but it'll have the same name, everything. You just have to re-download it or just reopen it.
Okay, hold on.
Hold on. Don't let me go.
Oh, there it is. Okay, now. Download. And then I see I have a new Dealy Bobber thingy from Brooke for the app. So I will.
Yeah, that's just for, I mean, just so you have it. I would go ahead and download. If you have an Android, go ahead and download that app and then we can talk about it all together Saturday.
Okay, yeah, I'll do that for Saturday.
Saturday
in the park.
I think it was the
Another day
in the park. I can tell you what album that was, what year it was released. It was written by Robert Lamb. I'm sorry, I'm a Chicago freak.
People laughing, people crying, having such a good time.
Y'all, we're having way too much fun. Okay, I'm ready when y'all are.
All right.
All right.
Let me close that one and open. Oh, farty fart. Hold on.
Is that your usual swear, farty fart?
No.
Yeah. We're all adults here.
No, I'm an F-bomb. I'm an F-bomb motherfucker.
I thought you were my girl. You scared me.
Yeah.
Slow motion.
Okay, I'm ready.
When a person reaches the end of his or her life, how do they say goodbye? How do they communicate the love and significance of a lifelong relationship with someone else? Our next story comes from Fort Worth, Texas. Meet Susan.
Being the firstborn child to two ambitious and driven parents, I had many expectations placed upon me. It was understood that I would go to college, graduate, and become the next Barbara Walters.
Love that line.
I'm only slightly joking about the Barbara Walters bit.
Susan's mother spent a lot of one-on-one time with her and focused on her early childhood development. She was reading and writing at 4 years old, starting first grade at age 5, and had graduated high school at 16.
I think there's a reason people talk about mama's boys and daddy's girls. I was definitely a daddy's girl. While I favor my mom in appearance, every aspect of my personality undeniably comes from dad. My mom has always told me stories from my childhood, and one of my favorites is how my dad and I would wear matching bib overalls, black and white pinstriped. In a way, I guess I was his little mini-me. Early in his career, my father was a radio disc jockey, and our family would always listen to his show, and whenever he would play a request or dedicate a song to us, it was magic. And I can remember the morning he called my mother, telling her to turn on the radio. He had played Wake Up Little Susie by the Everly Brothers and dedicated it to me. In elementary school, everyone knew my dad was on the most popular rock station in Detroit. I was considered special, kind of like the child of celebrity. And that lasted until a new girl came to school and her daddy was on television.
High parental expectations are often coupled with strict discipline. And for many kids, the response is to rebel.
My teenage years were really tough for me and the whole family. My dad was a strict disciplinarian and was especially hard on me and my baby brother. I was pushing away from my parents and acting out in destructive ways. I took a lot of risks and made many bad decisions. And this all culminated in my being expelled from high school my senior year. Fortunately, the school attorney was a family friend, and the end result was I received on campus suspension, where I was segregated with the bad kids until the end of the school year. Years later, Dad told me he was at a complete loss on how to handle me. He said he tried to persuade me to stop my destructive behavior. He threatened me, he bribed me, he begged me, and nothing seemed to work. All I wanted was to get the hell away from home. My father once told me to get in the car and wouldn't tell me where he was taking me. Evidently, he had made prior arrangements with the sheriff, and so he took me to the city jail and had them lock me up in a cell so that I could experience what my life would look like if I didn't straighten up and walk the straight and narrow. So, needless to say, I had an extremely contentious relationship with my father. That didn't start to change until after I moved to Europe and married my husband. Age and circumstances had mellowed my father, and I no longer felt the need to shock and rebel. As an adult, we developed a trusting and respectful relationship. My husband and father got along extremely well. We'd go and visit him when we could, and Dad would often come by our house on weekend mornings. He'd walk in the house carrying a cup of hot coffee, and he'd call out, "Hello, kid." And I would get excited knowing that we'd have an entertaining morning visiting and telling stories. And I knew that I could always talk with my dad about the important things, philosophical conversations about morality, loyalty, meaning of life. We discussed what made life worth living, and the big one, does God exist? It was interesting to hear his opinions, as he usually offered a more nuanced argument. And that, along with his years of life experience, were treasures for me as I considered the answers to these questions of mine. Our discussions were always logical and fact-based, with room for emotion and human response. Neither of us were what one would call religious or spiritual or new age. Our conversations never included anything unexplainable. We were both cerebral beings with a strong creative side. As I mentioned before, my dad was always ambitious and driven. He was the typical type A personality, and like most men, he never took care of his health like he should have.
In early 2006, Susan's father suffered a series of strokes that left him in the ICU at St. John's in Tulsa.
Dad spent weeks at St. John's, and my family and I tried to keep a rotation schedule where we could check in daily. We kept a notebook and would log what the nurses and doctors had said so that everyone who came would be apprised of his progress. And after some time in ICU, he was eventually transferred to a regular room. And that was great news, and it gave us so much hope for recovery. It also made it more comfortable for him and for those of us spending time with him. And I burned him a CD with his favorite music to listen to, hoping that it would soothe him during his many days in hospital. After several rough weeks, it seemed like my father was improving. And on February 14th, Valentine's Day, I went with a friend to visit him. And he was so alert and communicative. He seemed like his old self, witty and inquisitive, and I was thrilled. We were making plans for what to do when he was released. And I looked forward to caring for him when he recovered, while he recovered.
So, this is the part of the tale where Susan describes her supernatural experience. But we have to preface this part of the story by stating
I love to sleep.
Susan loves to sleep.
And I very rarely have problems going to sleep or staying asleep. except for the random bathroom visits. And even then, I trudged to the toilet with my eyes barely open, feeling my way into the bathroom. And then I trudge back to bed in a semi-conscious state and immediately fall back into a deep sleep. I can sleep while under a tornado watch, which completely baffles my husband and I think also makes him jealous. So, all this to say, I sleep hard and I like it that way.
So, on the morning of February 16th,
I was awakened from a deep sleep. This was around 1:30 in the morning, and it was the strangest experience. I felt a powerful rush of energy just whoosh through me, and I sat straight up in bed, 100% wide awake. I had no idea what woke me up or why. I just knew. I felt this rush of energy that entered me. It felt urgent. It felt significant. I sat for a moment, wondering at the strangeness of it. And then I decided to go to the bathroom and return to bed. It wasn't 5 minutes later that the phone rang. My husband answered and called me to the phone. It was my sister, sobbing, saying, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. He's gone. We've lost him."
imagine being in Susan's situation. What would you think?
I can't tell you when I made the connection, if it was instantaneous or the epiphany happened later, but I knew that burst of physical energy that whooshed through me happened at the exact moment of my father's passing. And I know that it was him letting me know and saying goodbye. I can't tell you how I knew, except that I just accepted this as truth unwaveringly. There was no need to Google search if anyone else had ever experienced something similar or if there were any blog posts about something like this. I knew deep in my core. I later shared this with my sisters, and neither experienced this. It was just me. And to me, that made sense. I'm not saying that I was my father's favorite, but our relationship was, in my mind, much deeper. My father was an extraordinary man, and I am who I am today because of him. I thank him. I love him. And I miss him.
Wake up, little Susie, wake up. Wake up, little Susie. Catherine, are you ready?
Susan, I got expelled my senior year as well.
Mine was drugs. What was yours?
Well, there were drugs involved, but it was throwing my backpack at my wheelchair-bound physics teacher and then kicking a desk down the hall.
You're my brother from another mother.
Yeah.
Funny.
And I'm my dad's favorite.
That's hilarious.
All right. Nice to meet you, John.
John,
I love your story, Susan.
I love all our stories. This is going to be a kick-ass show.
I'm a daddy's girl, though, so it's like that really hits home.
Yeah. I feel you, girl.
What'd you say, Catherine?
I said, no offense, but I'm glad you were not in one of my classes.
Oh God, no! I was the challenging 4.0 student that all the teachers hated, and loved, and hated.
All the teachers who didn't have me loved me.
Well, I tend to get along best with that kind anyway, actually.
The ones you don't have?
No.
The challenging ones.
All right. Yeah. Let's keep rocking. We're running really far behind. So let's
Catherine. This is the last one, isn't it?
No, there's one more after this.
I only have 10. Okay, I need to. All right.
There's another one you probably don't have access to. Hey, Tim, can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, I don't have 10. Wait.
Oh, what's up?
Hey, Tim, will you email John your script real fast?
Yeah, I don't have
will
10.
email John my script.
Thank you, Tim.
What's John's email address?
Burnsie1 at Gmail. BURNSIE1 at Gmail.
At Gmail. You got it.
Thank you, Tim.
Sir. Catherine was born in 1958 in Okmulgee, Oklahoma.
1964 was a banner year for me.
Television
I
was
years old, and I remember seeing the Beatles
Hang
on
on.
the Ed
Hey,
Sullivan
Catherine.
Show. Huh?
Catherine, hang on. I think I need to ask you to go. You weren't here earlier. I need you to go to the re-download your script. I've updated it.
Oh, my bad.
No, it's my bad. I didn't tell you.
Sorry.
Ooh, cool. I just downloaded the flat color flashlight.
Yeah.
we gonna use like the blue or the pink or the red or something, or?
No, we're gonna try to use like a campfire looking color.
Huh. Okay, I might have to figure out how to get there, but cool.
Yeah, we'll sort through that all, and Michael and I are going to have our daytime rehearsal tomorrow. We'll sort through it all, and then I'll catch everybody up on Saturday when we have everybody here at the same time.
Groovy. Okay. Bye.
Can you just run
Have a good night, Susan.
campfire on your TV and turn off the lights and go do in front of it?
Yeah, it would. The problem with that is it'll reflect in people's eyeglasses. Catherine, did you find it?
I won't be wearing eyeglasses during the show. My eyes just get tired at night. It was time for the contacts to go.
Were you able to find the script?
Yes, I'm reading it on my phone, and it's not as big as what I would print out, but I'll get it printed.
Okay. Most of the text stayed the same. I just kind of broke it out, as you can see.
Right.
Okay. All right. I'll leave you guys to it. Start from the top, please, John.
And I cannot wear glasses if you'd prefer.
Yeah, probably. If anybody, I think the only other person who wears glasses, I think we all wear glasses.
We're all old, except for Darby.
I think Darby actually wears glasses too, but okay. All right, let's go.
Okay.
And Ion's not old.
Hang on, I've got to go back to, I lost it off my phone. Sorry. I've got to get it. Oh, fuck. Sorry. Okie dokie, Smokey. Let's try this.
All righty. Catherine was born in 1958 in Okmulgee, Oklahoma.
Hello?
At 6 years old, Catherine's life took a major turn.
1964 was a banner year for me.
Television was a big deal.
I remember seeing the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show.
JFK.
I remember the assassination of John F. Kennedy, and I remember watching his funeral on our little black and white television.
That's also the year that your father saved your life for the first time.
It was a Sunday night in late January, and as usual, my mothers and sisters were at church for different activities, and my dad was home with me. And let's see. I was watching my favorite TV show, My Favorite Martian, while my dad was doing the books, as he called it, for the feed store that he owned. When a commercial came on, my 6-year-old self thought that was a great time to go into my sister's bedroom and nose around. I found a bottle of fingernail polish remover on the dresser, and I thought that was pretty cool because that's what the big girls used, and I liked being one of the big girls as the youngest of three girls. So, of course, I ended up opening up the bottle and I spilled it all over my shirt. I didn't want to get in trouble. So I decided to dry my shirt before my father could see it. So, I'm sorry, I'm going back and forth between both scripts. How far do I go? Floor furnace and gas wall heaters. Okay. Now remember, it's 1964, and we didn't have central heat and air in our house, but we did have gas floor furnaces and gas wall heaters.
So, for those who aren't familiar, a gas floor furnace or gas wall heater is an open flame in one of a number of available metal coverings. But in most cases, the flame was readily accessible.
There was a bathroom between my sister's bedroom and the den where I'd been watching television. And since it was January, the gas wall heater was on. Of course, my shirt ignited and flames were belching from my torso. I remember I could see around the corner of our den, sitting in the kitchen, punching numbers into an adding machine. Or I could see my dad, sorry. I remember I could see my dad around the corner of our den, sitting at the kitchen, punching numbers into an adding machine. I was crying and running in place, but I wasn't screaming. I think I must have gone into shock because I couldn't talk or yell. All I could do was cry and run in place. I heard my dad say, "What's the matter, honey?" But he didn't come. I remember wanting to call out to him, but I couldn't do anything but I skipped a fucking line. This is driving me crazy. I'm sorry. I can't do this on my phone. I heard my dad say, "What's the matter, honey?" But he didn't come.
Catherine, if you want, just read it off your screen, and John, you just kind of like interject.
Thank you. Interrupt me when it's time. Just talk over me.
I'll do my best.
Okay. Okay. I heard my dad say, "What's the matter, honey?" But he didn't come. I could hear the sound of the adding machine as he continued punching in the numbers. Click, click, click. Shh. And he asked again, "What's the matter, honey?" I remember I wanted to call out to him. I wanted to run to him, but I couldn't do anything but continue to cry. Finally, I remember seeing him stand up and turn the corner into our den. I see him walking toward me, and I'm sure he was just as shocked to see what he was seeing as I was to be going through what I was going through. But it was like watching a movie in slow motion. And then finally he was there. He pulled me into his chest, into one of the biggest bear hugs I think I've ever had. And we went down on the floor. He was able to smother the flames with his own body. And then he wrapped me up in a blanket and he rushed me to the hospital. I remember laying in the hospital bed with a metal frame over my torso. It had a light bulb attached in the middle, and the sheet was pulled over the frame to keep anything from touching me. After a couple of days, a little girl who was across the hall from my room and who had burned her back as badly as I'd burned my front died of her injuries. I was told later that a nurse had taken my dad aside and urged him to take me to Hillcrest Burn Center in Tulsa, or that I would die too. So I was rushed by ambulance to Hillcrest Burn Center, except that it's not the same Hillcrest we know today. In 1964, the present-day Hillcrest Hospital was being built, and during my 2-month stay in the hospital, I watched from my window as a group of workers built the hospital that we know now.
So, because of your father's quick reactions and the decision to move you to Hillcrest in Tulsa, you eventually made a full recovery.
My dad and I became particularly close after this event. I grew up knowing that my dad was my hero, and he would always come to my rescue no matter what. And that bond stayed all the way through my adulthood. One of the things I remember most about my dad was the way that he smelled. Dad was a chain smoker, and back in the 60s, a smoker could smoke pretty much anywhere they wanted, and my dad certainly did. And he smoked a combination of cigarettes, cigars, and tobacco, and pipe tobacco. And that combination of odors made for a very distinctive and very unique smell that only my dad smelled like. And that smell pervaded our entire house, our clothing, our hair, our vehicles. And today people might find that smell repulsive, but to me, it always represented love and safety and protection. I love the way my dad smelled.
Fast forward many years to the early 2000s.
Dad died in 2004. A couple of days after his death, I got into my car and was backing out of the driveway when I noticed a very distinctive, very familiar, and very comfortable smell. As I was backing out of the driveway, the smell got even stronger. It was my dad. By the time I reached the first stop sign, the smell had gotten even stronger. In fact, it had become so strong that I actually said, "Daddy?" I looked to my left and I looked to my right, and I didn't see anyone coming. So I started to drive into the intersection. And at that same moment, that smell got so strong, it was literally, I felt like I was being enveloped. It was absolutely surrounding me. And also at that same moment, I see a car speeding straight toward me out of my left, to my left, out of the blue. And I slammed on my brakes. The other driver slammed on his. And I sat there shaking with fear and relief because I could not believe that he did not hit me. And after a few seconds, the driver honked at me, went around me, and kept going. It took me a bit to pull myself together enough to keep on going. But as I did, I noticed that the smell was dissipating. And by the time I reached the next stop sign, it had vanished completely. I know my dad was in the car with me that day. There is no possible way that smell could have been in my car. And I know what I smelled. No one and nothing else smells like my dad. And I wasn't really surprised after I had time to think about it. Of course he was there. He was doing what he'd been doing his whole life, taking care of his little girl. I apologize.
Cue the music. Why would you apologize for that? Cue.
We'll get that printed because I did not notice it.
Oh no, it's I sent it late. Ask Susan. Well, don't ask Susan. She's not here, but I sent it late. Thank you, Catherine. Have an awesome night. I'll send notes tomorrow.
Thank
Tim,
you.
are you ready?
Thanks,
I
Catherine.
am ready.
Hey, Tim, my love. How you doing, buddy?
Great. How are you?
Good.
All right.
When you're a child growing up in a small town in the 1950s, your imagination runs wild. Big old houses can hide secrets that may never be truly known. And those imagined secrets can sometimes be hard to distinguish from reality. Tim grew up in such a town, Franklinville, New York. Nestled in the foothills of the Allegheny Mountains in western New York State, the village was filled with old, grand houses, some owned by generations of one family, and local tales were a tradition.
I was raised to believe in ghosts. My grandmother used to tell me that every house has a spirit, some good, some not so good. She had seen the one that lived in her house. During the 1930s, my grandparents, who had emigrated from Italy, lived with my mom and her three sisters in a big old house in Auburn, New York. They all lived on the first floor and rented the second floor to make ends meet. My mom and her three sisters all slept in one bed. One night, my grandmother woke up and saw a young girl walk past the bedroom door into the living room. Rather than follow the girl, she looked into the next room to see which daughter was out of bed. They were all sound asleep. My grandmother, who would call you the next day if she had a dream about you, said the spirit in their house was good. I would walk by the old houses in our town, many of which I had been told were haunted, and wonder when it would be my turn to see a ghost. I'd have feelings when near certain houses or when in my grandparents' house, but I never really saw any evidence. My mom and my Aunt Yolanda would both talk about dreams they had, usually around the time of someone's death. But the dreams were usually dismissed as coincidence or funny. And I secretly wished it would happen to me. Just some concrete evidence. Lilydale, New York is a spiritualist community about an hour from Franklinville. I'd heard the stories of the people who had visited, but it was considered strange. My parents always found a way to avoid a trip. And that was frustrating to me. I just wanted some answers.
While attending college in Buffalo, New York, 1975, Tim may have gotten his wish.
When I was a junior in college, some friends and I rented an apartment on Linwood Avenue in Buffalo. The street was lined with old Victorian houses that had been divided into apartments, and it was close to Canisius College in Buffalo State. We found a second floor apartment with 3 bedrooms, a huge kitchen and bath, and a big second story front porch. And we had a separate entrance on the side of the house. Some epic parties were thrown in that apartment. We had been there a couple of years when a couple of college friends, Marianne and Billy, who were regular visitors at our place, found an apartment 3 houses down. Their apartment was in a big gray house right next to the parking lot for Millard Fillmore Hospital. The house had been divided rather strangely. It had a big front porch. You entered the door on the porch and you walked up a flight of stairs to the second floor in their apartment, which also had a second story porch like ours. The people who lived on the first floor entered through the back and didn't have access to the front porch. Marianne and Billy actually rented the second and third floors in the front. Marianne had her bedroom on the second floor, and Billy had his in the back on the third floor. The rest of the third floor was one big room that, no surprise, hosted a lot of gatherings. So, it was close to the end of August, and it was a typical college moving day. We had plenty of beer and pot and pizza. We would order pizza when we were done. Billy and Marianne pulled up in the U-Haul, and we had everything upstairs within a couple of hours. I think there were 6 of us working. It was a late afternoon on a warm August day. The 3 of us were on the couch, facing the open French doors leading out to the porch. A couple of folks were in chairs, also facing the open doors, and Marianne was in the kitchen behind us, starting to unpack boxes. We had our beers, somebody was rolling a joint, and we were discussing whether to get pizza or wings and pizza. Like I said, it was a late afternoon on a sunny day. Suddenly, we all felt a stiff breeze coming from our backs, where there was no window or a door. We all stopped and looked at each other. I got up and I walked into the kitchen. I looked at Marianne and I asked, "Did you feel that?" She nodded her head. "I think you have a ghost," I said, kind of joking. We ate our pizza and we started to help Billy and Marianne unpack. By Billy's room on the third floor was a door leading to the back stairway. It was locked, but the key was in the door. Now, being college students, we were compelled to explore. We opened the door. The stairway had some old window shades, paint cans, and other crap stored in it. But directly opposite the door was a window looking out to the back of the house. And on the sill was a small painting, about 8 inches by 10 inches. It was a series of circles that looked like they had been drawn in one motion. But somehow, where the circles intersected, it formed a face. And it was painted in shades of blacks and browns and yellow and green. We immediately knew this was our ghost. We decided to leave the picture where it was, and we locked the door. Marianne named him Edwin. Edwin would reveal himself whenever you visited. You'd turn on the light in the bathroom, and Edwin would be standing in the shower. You'd see him hiding behind the half wall when you went up to the third floor. It seemed like Edwin liked having us around. He liked playing jokes on us. And we would often have our dogs with us. The dogs were never frightened, but they stayed on the second floor. One night, about 2 a.m, Mary Ann woke up from a sound sleep. Edwin was standing by her bed, and he wasn't popping in and out like usual. Mary Ann said he seemed urgent, and he just stayed. So Mary Ann got out of bed. She said Edwin led her upstairs to Billy's room. She found Billy with a 104-degree fever. She managed to get him downstairs into the car and drove him next door to the emergency room just before his appendix burst.
Tim had his evidence.
I think knowing Edwin has given me an acceptance of my own beliefs and a confidence in them. I've lost track of Mary Ann and Billy and Edwin, but I'll certainly never forget them. And I have felt how thin the veil is on many occasions. When you walk into my friend Dorothy's house in Franklinville, you can still smell her grandfather's cigars, and he died in 1965. I was very good friends with Maxine Andrews of the Andrews Sisters and was with her when she passed in 1995. For 3 days beforehand, any store we walked into was playing the Andrews Sisters. When I'm feeling down, I'll hear a song by the sisters on the radio or in a movie soundtrack or playing as background music in a store. I finally got to Lilydale in 2005 after my father had passed. Seated in the amphitheater, one of the spiritualists pointed to me from the stage saying, "There are two spirits watching over you, a tall man and a small woman." Whenever I dream of my mother, who was 4'8", the events will happen literally. I found an old journal the other day. The night my mother died, I dreamed about my father, who was 6'2". Nothing is ever the end. Just different.
Conclusion. And agree. Yeah, I have a question, Tim.
Yeah.
Something didn't click with me. So on the sill was a small painting, 8 by 10 inches. It was a series of circles, looked like they had been drawn in one motion, but somehow the circles intersected, it formed a face, and it was painted in shades black, brown, yellow, and green, and we immediately knew this was our ghost. And we decided to leave the picture. So then when Edwin starts revealing himself, is it the picture that shows up around the house, or is it like a human form?
No, it was an actual human form, but with that kind of face on it.
Interesting.
Like an unclear face. And he would just always pop out. You know, like I said, you'd walk into the bathroom and the mirror was on the right. And you turn on the light and look in the mirror, and he'd be in the shower on your left. Of course, you look in the shower, and there's no one there.
Would that scare the hell out of you, though?
Oh,
I know, that scared the shit out of me.
He loved doing it. And we'd be over there, we'd be having a party, and you'd hear somebody that hadn't been there, and you would have forgotten to warn them about Edwin. And they go into the bathroom, and I remember my friend Cindy just screaming at the top of her lungs. We're like, "Oh shit, we forgot to tell her about Edwin."
Tim, you have to add that to the story. Tim, you need to add that to the story.
Yeah. Okay.
Can you write that in? That's bit about Cindy.
Sure.
I just for the we forgot to we forgot to tell her about it.
We gotta yeah, right. And we gotta I know I haven't looked at the hard copy of your script. We're gonna have to break up just a little bit. So John has more chances to kind of. There's another script where there were long passages that needed to be broken up by a little bit. I felt like too tonight.
Catherine's maybe, or
was it one of the early ones? I felt like
maybe
Chris.
But I don't know if maybe you can clarify, because I immediately just started thinking the painting was showing up, and then I was confused with Mary Ann and him standing at the bed.
You got it.
Yeah, we got to get that part about your friend. That'll be a good like Mr. Saturday Night kind of move, like pulling people to the comedy side before you go into the thing about how he like warns about your friend too. Like just to have that real funny moment where he scares the shit out of your friend, and you guys are like, "Oh shit, we forgot to."
Like, it could be like, Cindy goes in the bathroom and then she starts screaming, and then I could say they forgot to tell her about Edwin, and then you could say we forgot to tell her about Edwin.
Yeah, kind of like that moment in the other script. You guys played that beautifully, where Susan goes to likes to sleep. You guys played that beautifully.
Susan, like, yeah.
I'll have that to you first thing in the morning.
Okay, so I'm gonna unmark this other one then, and that. Okay, yeah. Hey, will you paste that out of your document? Will you paste that into the email instead of attaching the document? It's just fewer things I have to take those documents and wait for pages to change them, and then so it's just easier if you do it, if I can just copy paste it.
You can do it. Yeah, I can do that.
I think that's it. I'm gonna send some other notes, kind of individual notes to people as soon as I get around to it tomorrow, and then hopefully get all these scripts all made into one with storyboards in it too, so we can kind of see what we're hoping this screen will look like in the YouTube live for people. Although we did notice tonight there were some issues with that, so like we're trying to set the Zoom to show one thing and it's not really doing what we're saying. So we got to figure out what those settings are. Brooke and I will work on that. But yeah, Tim, thanks for sticking around. I know it's past time, but
yeah, really cut into my debate time.
Jeez, what a shit show. I'm just kind of like, I kind of look down to see like I'm waiting for a message on Messenger, and if you just open Facebook, you just see the notification real fast, so it's easy. Every time I do, it's like somebody else is like irritated with Trump has said something else stupid, so I'm just like, ugh.
No, I would when my camera wasn't on, I'd sneak in, look at the TV, and I could only do it for 30 seconds at a time.
Yeah, it's all you can stomach at one time.
Nothing. Sure.
John, if you have ideas about I liked that you were talking about the thing that didn't click there. If you as we move on, like, don't feel like the script is set in stone. Like, make it your own voice too. Like, the words are just kind of what people, like a first pass of, and it's just, they just wrote in a narrator. They didn't really write it with a voice that was in tune with, first of all, you, but then also not in tune with one another as far as like arcing your presentation style throughout. So if you have thoughts like that, feel free to insert them.
I noticed that this was my first time reading it at all, but I noticed it, and I'll pay more attention tomorrow, where the ones that kind of match what I'm trying to go for, and then the ones that were a little bit off, and then I think that there needs to be something. I feel like the narrator needs to end all the stories with something.
Yeah, I mean, that I had thought that too, and I kind of was just like, I was kind of at my wit's end with some other things that were going on while I was doing these, and I just didn't want to force the creative side. So, and I know that there's going to be music, and the music will help you too. So,
so I'll think about it. But like the one that I just came up with about bumping uglies,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's actually fine as long as you can make it not the only thing that's like that. So it's not totally out of left field by comparison to other things.
No, I might be able to find something. But yeah, I'll think about some little taglines at the end, and anything that needs to be adjusted for tone. But again, this was my first time reading through it, so I'll pay more attention tomorrow.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm I'm fully cognizant and understanding of that too. So don't feel like I hope you don't feel like I'm pressuring you. I'm not intending to. So,
But
You'll
dude,
send.
I love you. I'll see you tomorrow.
Love you, Tammy.
All righty.
have a good night, bud.
I know you'll send me some notes, but
I really don't. That was kind of going to be it. Honestly, I'm not going to send you notes. I think
that was generally what you're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of like, and the more you can help people to be relaxed in their own stories just by your own demeanor. You know, a lot of people are really I'll say they're far to the right in that they're narrating their own experiences,
Right.
whereas my hope is that they are just like sharing it. So that's what everybody's going to get an individual note about that tomorrow in an email.
Yeah. So yeah, because yeah, I felt like there were 4 people that it felt more interview documentarian sort of style, and best were more reading their story.
Mm-hmm. The other thing I'll say is, as you approach this, even though sometimes it feels like tempting to get into a dialogue, I really want, it's hard for you to see me because the light in here, but I really want the stories to have a feel of like you're just 2 objects telling the same story that are traveling at the same time. So it's not like the exchange with Susan was great because it really illustrated that perfectly. It's like even in those short, quick snips, it's like you're both just telling the same story from a different vantage point, as opposed to 2 people talking.
I think it's a function of the words that were written, and that was one of the notes I had, is that it would switch back and forth between, so if that's the case, I should never address the person and say, so you blah blah blah. I should always say, so they blah blah blah, and then let them respond as if I was kind of talking. I'll watch for that, but I noticed,
and some of that is on me too, because I was trying, like, they would give me these scripts and they would be like, they would have these exchanges being really like direct toward between the 2 of you, and I would change it and I would be like, okay, so move us to XYZ, and really what it should be is more like, so now we move ahead to X, more like you're just saying what's happening instead of giving them the instruction to move us ahead. You should just be like, now we're moving ahead to so many years later, or this has happened. And then there were some times when it was kind of rough to be like how would you break out of it? And maybe it doesn't have to be like a hard and fast rule about not addressing them, but
I'll figure it out. I was sticking to the script that was there, but if there's any way for you to pay attention to what I'm doing there and just make a note of what I did, or have someone do that. I don't know if there's a stage manager or what.
Brooke is. So Brooke, can you hear us? And are you there behind the B? Okay. So with what we're talking about, like, when we get the script tomorrow, if you have a chance to print it, I don't know if you will or not, but even if it's just something where you kind of make notes in the Google Drive, if you kind of note, like, anytime that you hear him like directly address a storyteller, or if you hear him like say something that is like a direct, like a good example is, okay, now move us ahead to so and so, as opposed to saying, now our story advances to, like talking about it instead of talking to the storyteller. Do you understand the nuance I'm asking about?
Yes.
Okay, and then if you just note that, so we can go back and fix it.
Yeah. So David, I might actually like play with adjusting that, and so Brooke, if you actually, like, if you're following the script and you notice that I change what the script says to adjust for that, just maybe make a note of what it is I said. Does that make?
Yes.
Is that doable?
Yes.
Cool.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, she just says yes to everything. I like.
But thanks for the emails and stuff.
You're welcome.
All right.
I think that's really it, John. And I feel like the other thing is like if you can kind of like try to get off book, but you have a whole like I don't feel like that's going to be a problem. Especially in the situation where you're in, where like realistically you could just read ahead and be like, oh, that's my next line, and then say it. You know what I mean? So I'm not.
That's what I'll do. I'm not going to try to memorize this. I've got two, but I will read ahead and deliver my line to the camera.
Okay.
That way you're.
Yes, it is. And then we'll talk about when we set up everybody else and talk about how I want everybody's stuff to set up. You'll know. I mean, I kind of feel like if I remember your house right, if like you just sat at the kitchen table, that'd be fine. And then we'll get the.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I can play around with spot.
Do you have a window on your? First of all, does your staircase have a landing?
My staircase has a landing.
Is there a window by it?
There's not a window by the landing.
Okay, never mind.
But yeah, I can play. We can play around with where I might sit.
Okay, something comfortable but like stationary.
Yeah.
I had thought actually during the presentation tonight, I was like, wouldn't it be cool if John was like walking through spaces and like, like as you're saying your line, like you're delivering your line while you're like walking through and like you can see your whole house is dark, but you can still see stuff behind you. Like, I don't know, just something. I had that idea. Do I know?
I could do something like that.
Okay. Well, we have time to play with it. So if you do feel like you want to try that, go ahead.
We'll play with it. So I'll be there tomorrow. I won't be there Saturday, and then I'll be there. Next week is just Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, right?
Yeah, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We might have a Q to Q on Monday, but I don't think that you necessarily have to be there for that if you can't.
I can be there if you want me to.
I do if you can, because your voice will be a part of a lot of the cues.
Yeah.
What time on Monday?
Say it again.
What time Monday?
I'm not sure. If we have it, I'll just be like, hey, Brooke, when can we do it?
Yeah.
So I'll just kind of get together with people and like, I would have to have you and Michael, I think, and then really just kind of anybody else who could come and be a participant, but ultimately it would just be kind of like just getting your hands like moving and seeing if the screen layouts work and making sure it all goes to live the way we want it to. So
Okay.
Yes, Lori just sent me a text message. I think this is a great point. We need to create opening and closing monologues for you and they don't have to be like super long. It needs to be like a few sentences each.
Yeah.
Beginning and end of the show. Also beginning and end of each act. And if you just want to, like, even if you just want to pitch me ideas on that, John, I can write those up for you. I know you have a lot going on.
I'll do my best. I wasn't paying attention to if there was a theme across the three acts, and so I'll pay attention to that tomorrow a little bit more. And
yeah, I can actually tell you, first act, we're titling the acts Mysteries, Mothers, and Fathers. So the first three stories are things that sort of didn't fall into other categories, and then it was Mothers and Fathers. So
yes. It can just be, the show can start out with something like, welcome to Pass the Flashlight. I'm just being very basic here. We have three acts for you tonight. First act, Mysteries. Second act, Mothers. Third act, Fathers. And then go into the first act saying, there are some things that just cannot be explained.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's others that are easily explained.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
the sister. But something along those lines. We'll hammer it out. And in our first story, we're gonna listen to something about something that can't be explained or something along those lines. I'm fucking tired. But
yeah. Hey, I
yeah.
actually just sent Lori a message to say, because she said she volunteered to write something for it, and I just said, yeah, I mean, if send us something, and then John and I can polish it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
John,
Thank
go get some rest, brother. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Love you.
Love you too. Brooke, do you have anything for us?
No, I'm good.
Okay. I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks so much for keeping us on our toes and getting everything set up and
Yep.
running. All right.